Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner. I am privileged to be joined by fellow super comics fan and notorious, infamous, famous comics creator of great repute, Mr. Mark Waid. How you doing, mate?
Good, sir. I want you to write my eulogy. I think that's you're the guy.
I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do
Right.
it, but hopefully not for
I was going to say
decades.
happily is not the word you were looking for, but yes.
No, that's right, exactly. Maybe what I'm hoping for is that I will predecease you, so I'll just leave you a note, a time capsule with the
Fair
eulogy
enough.
in it. Yeah.
Right.
Actually, unlike our previous chats, we're not here to talk about your work. We're here to talk about something that we both love, which is the DC Comics short-lived five issue Captain Action series from the 60s,
Yeah.
which has been collected as the hardcover collected edition that's attached to the links in this conversation. So Mark, for the uninitiated, what can you tell me about this series?
I'm so excited about this finally being published. Captain Action was a treasured toy of my youth, and I'm sure yours as well. It was a response to G.I. Joe. Let me give you the background. So Mattel had Barbies. They were doing huge. This is the early 1960s. The thought became, what can we do for a boy's toy that is similar, where we can sell? It's the razor and blade model. It is, you're selling someone a razor, but what you're really selling them is the fact they have to buy blades for the rest of their life. And that's the Barbie model, right? You buy one Barbie, but you got to buy a million clothes. What can we do? And so that's how G.I. Joe was created, as not a counterpoint. That was Mattel, a huge toy manufacturer. So Ideal, the other huge toy manufacturer, was like, what do? We got to have our own G.I. Joe, but that ground has been taken. And someone had the brilliant idea of creating the action figure, the 12-inch action figure, with different outfits you could buy, but they were all superhero outfits. They were all licensed superhero outfits. So Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Green Hornet, Sergeant Fury. It's just some of the characters that you could dress Captain Action up as. I loved it when I was 5 years old. It was the greatest toy ever. And I still have, thank you, eBay. I've managed to, fulfill, drag all that stuff back in my life.
But it was the fact that you could dress him up as Sergeant Fury, I always thought was the thing that really stood out to me.
And then they kicked off with Action Boy the next year. So Robin, Superboy, Aqualad. It was so much fun to play with that stuff when I was a kid, and it was just so imaginative. And so DC did, at that time in 1968, a very rare move for them, which was to do a licensed book, which they had not done for a long time, where they would do a Captain Action comic. Now, they had to take a slightly different take on it, right? Because you can't have Captain Action in a DC comic dress up like Spider-Man. That's not Buck Rogers. So they had a much different take on it. It was Mort Weisinger who was the editor. He was also the Superman editor. It was the only the only non-Superman related book he had edited for decades. And he went to his number one writer in his mind, was Jim Shooter, a young man who had made his mark on the Legion of Superheroes. He went to Jim, and he went to the esteemed Wally Wood to do the artwork on the kickoff. And right off the bat, it was just so much fun. It was so delightful. That first issue, you get to see Captain Action literally pushing Superman aside, going, "I'm on the case. Don't worry about it. Go home, Superman." So those first two issues really stand out as Jim Shooter, Wally Wood coming up with a brand new origin for the character. They're so well crafted. They're two of my all-time favorite comics. And then Mort retired. And so the books went to Julie Schwartz, who just gave the whole thing over to Gil Kane, which is, again, not a step down.
Yeah.
So Gil Kane wrote and drew issues 3, 4, and 5. And they are a violent departure from what you had seen with 1 and 2, but they were still so energetic and so much fun and so delightful that when the book issue ended with issue 5, it was a personal tragedy at that point. I still am not recovered completely. So these have been some of my all-time favorite Desert Island comics since I was a child. And a couple of years ago, Ed Cato,
our mutual friend, actually, great bloke. Yeah, great bloke.
Ed, who had been managing the Captain Action license in more recent years, when they revived the character, they revived the toy, and he'd been managing the license. And And he contacted me, said, we're going to do a collection of the 5 issues from, IDW, or would you do an introduction? And I couldn't say yes fast enough. What excited me even more is after I turned an introduction, someone had found the actual photostats of the black and white artwork of all of the issues. And so we weren't going to have to just do scans or clumsy reconstructions of the old 50-year-old comics. Someone actually had the pristine black and white scans of the artwork, and that's what we're using as the source material. And these books are going to look better than they ever did back in 1968.
That really is music to my ears. I mean, I know how long that Ed and Joe have been working on putting this together, and for them to put it together with those good people at IDW, I just think it's a glorious connection for you to be involved as well.
It's so much, and I was going to say too. So even if you don't care about Captain Action or care about 1960s toys or care about superheroes, even just the fact that it's Wally Wood and Gil Kane alone, that makes it a must-buy purchase, because it's just beautiful work from both men.
Yeah, I really couldn't agree more, because I bought these comics in real time when I was a little kid in the UK. My grandfather bought them for me. But what was eye-popping at the time was I didn't know anything about Captain Action being a toy until in the end I used to see the ads turn up on the back of some comic book covers. But when I first encountered, I didn't know the fact that it was a licensed property, and I didn't know the concept of the toy. But the way Shooter kind of interpolated that into Captain Action's origins on the page, that was fascinating to me. Could you talk a bit about that, Mark? Because it's really interesting what he did.
Yeah, sure. They had to figure out some way to square that circle, right? You can't actually have him become other existing superheroes, but you could give him different superpowers. So he comes across this giant chest of enchanted coins, all of them minted by different gods. And so depending upon which coins he was holding at the time, those are the powers he had. He could be as fast as Mercury. He could be as powerful as Odin. He could be, and it was all different backgrounds, all different sets of gods and so forth. So that was fun. That was, and frankly, a learning experience. You learn a little something as you read. And that was what he did. And boy, that again, the thing that I think plugged into me when I was a kid too, is that the beauty of that setup is you can pretend to be Captain Action as a kid very easily, because you don't have to come from another planet. You don't have to be a millionaire. All you need is a handful of coins, and you can pretend. That's the beauty of it. Anybody could be Captain Action if they got a handful of coins.
I mean, it's so simple but so powerful at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it wasn't to me as a kid. It wasn't the only innovation. What's always really stayed in my mind is the fact that Action Boy, Captain Action's sidekick, is his actual son.
Right, which nobody did. It wasn't a faithful war. Exactly, no. And the thing that sticks out in my mind, and boy, your readers won't care about this, your listeners won't care about this, but it's the only time ever that Mort Weisinger gave credits to the writers and artists in his books, ever. He edited a billion comics, and he was always stingy about giving credit, but Jim Shooter and Wally Wood actually have credit on page 1 of those books, and I'm glad for them.
Yeah. Me too, brother. And I mean, I guess on another family note, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is purely from memory, but I think Dr. Evil, Captain Action's arch enemy, is in fact his father-in-law, right?
Yes.
I think there's the whole family thing running through the book, which is really quite unusual.
Yep.
And it winds up, I think, on issue 5 is one of my all-time favorite comic books, with its premise rooted in the duality of human nature, and that sounds like a very highfalutin way to describe what is actually a pulp experience, but that book stayed with me for years and years and years.
Gil Kane is vastly underrated as a writer. Everybody knows he's one of the Mount Rushmore titans of comic book art, but boy, he knew what he was doing when he got behind the keyboard.
I couldn't agree more. I'm so pleased that you, of all people, are the person Ed asked to write the intro,
Oh, me
because
too.
you're clearly the right man for the job, and I can't wait to see this. And thanks so much for chatting to me about it,
Of
Mark.
course, absolutely.
And thanks for coming on. Please come back to Forbidden Planet TV and join us again in the future.
Anytime, sir.
Take care. All the best. Bye bye. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.